But it has to be clear to come together at the end.
Yeah, well, working with someone like Ev, she actually gives us specific rules that we kind of follow through. So we sort of all have the same task at hand, and we are all just kind of trying to accomplish. There's one point we call points in space, we go from one side of the stage all the way towards the end. It's kind of towards the end of the work. And that's sort of our task, is we have to get from point A to point B while going through a task. So it's, yeah, we're just finding the points through in the space. So that's kind of how we're creating.
And you shouldn't touch the other one, or shouldn't hurt the other one.
You know, sometimes we do have a little bit of contact, and it's so in the moment and at that point in time. So it's never I'm never going to try to recreate something that we've already created. It's just being in the moment, and if my body happens to take me there, then that's okay. But it's a matter of finding that in the moment factor.
So this cannot be rehearsed. The rehearse can be really just to get into the music and into the movement. Is that?
Yeah, maybe time you.
Well, to rehearse improvisation in that piece is maybe a little bit different than normally, for several reasons. First of all, like, each piece of music has what we could call a system, as they spoke about point in space, for example. So each system is very precise, and they have to keep into that frame of the system. The interesting thing is that the improvisation is coming in the second part of the show. So, as they mentioned, the first part is much more written, so they know exactly what they have to do at which point. But here already we start to think about grabbing the moment, because we're not machines. So even though we're going to do the same movement, some days we have a better balance, some days we go further, some days we don't catch the exact note, and that brings some different intervention between each other. And already there, with focus, with looking at each other, with grabbing whatever we can in the space, we already warming up this listening to the space, to the different texture that you have under the feet, in the elbows, in all your body, and between them. So when they get to the second part and they get to improvisation, yes, they do have set rules, but they're really fully aware of what's around them and who they are at that time. And I think that's where we're directing a lot of the improvisation for that piece. It's also, I think, José's work has this wonderful human mechanism. He's making a machine that works like 100%, but it only works 100% with the soul of people. If it was just machines, it would be boring. It somehow wouldn't go to the fear factor of something could happen, like something that you can recognize. And that's, I think, that's something we're also working with. It's to stay human and to bring that as much as possible, even in written work, as much as improvisation. So it's really like to find this mechanism that is working, but with a heart somehow, and actually sometimes even pushing to something that can actually give you trouble, because that's where it starts to be interesting. And that's where you see that actually the mechanism is working. It's when they get into troubles, because they know it so well, and they listen to each other so much, and also like the direction that they take, that even if they're falling, the other one is going to catch them. And that's the beauty, I think, of that work and of that piece.
Okay, fine. But I have a question, because José normally used contemporary music. So I think it's one of his first times he used second time. for the group that he used really classical music. Do you know why? Of course, for me, the Bach music fits perfect to the movement of José. But do you know why he started to work with classical music?
I actually did a program, a summer program that José choreographed on, I think about a year before he started creating Diptych. And he choreographed completely to electronic music and sort of this like ambient, like house, like boom, 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 boom. And we all thought it was so interesting because then when it came to the performance, he actually completely switched and we used part of Bach. And I think someone at one point was just kind of like, why? And to him it was the immediate contrast of the electronic-driven music and the idea of machine against sort of this gentle and fragile idea of classical music that he really enjoyed. So I don't know if it was necessarily a complete part that was driven through Bach, or sorry, through Diptych, but I know that was definitely one of his inspirations in the past.
I think that's a great answer, Billy, and good answer. The piece before was called S, which is still actually performing in the repertoire, and that's to Eric Satie. So I'd say that was kind of the entrance. Oh, it's back. Okay. All I could also think to answer your question would be it was a new challenge for him to see if he can still maintain this contemporary edge while still complementing just these masterpieces, and to see if perhaps his choreography could hold up to the great composers. But I think the answer more so about the contrasting to create more of a texture is probably right on.
I think it's also interesting to make a group piece on a solo instrument. So, and I think it was very important for him to use the piano and the cello that give a very different idea of space, and he works a lot with spatial ideas. The piano is dictating certain emotion as well, like for us nowadays, and the cello some others. And it's interesting to see how it guides you through different emotion and patterns through one instrument while it's several dancers dancing it. So I think it gets clear that the dancers are not the musical notes. It's really not that. So that could also be maybe a thought for it.
And why he chose for the improvisation part the cello, and for the more structured part, or which was settled with the piano music. And another point, there are several parts you use not at all music. Is there a short answer for this? I don't know. I would answer, I'll let the two others maybe say something about piano and cello, but about the silence and the music. There's an artist in Canada called Robert Lepage, who is a visual artist and does artistic movies. And his thought was quite interesting, and my point is coming now. What he was saying that radio was a visual media, while film is an auditive media. And I think in this piece you can see that. When the music is there, you can close your eyes, which I hope you didn't do, but you can close your eyes and listen, of course. But somehow you feel the movement and you see it. It brings imagination into you. You can, through the music and the dance, you have a different imagination than when it's a silence. Your imagination is going somewhere else, and it's going to be, you're also going to open your ears much more, because what you see is so powerful that you're going to be listening to everything, to all the sound, even the sound that they do just by cutting the air, their breathing, everything. So I think that's a very interesting contrast. And I'm sure you can realize maybe later that yourself, you open your senses differently.